Picture yourself standing right at the edge of a huge stage in Melbourne. The air is heavy with the scent of luxury floral displays, and there's a quiet hum from an auditorium built to hold thousands. You glance out, expecting a sea of faces, a thunder of applause, and that charged energy that usually surrounds a member of the British royal family. But instead, something hits you instantly. Your stomach sinks. In front of you are rows of empty velvet seats. The platinum section is barely one-third occupied. A few flickering screens show virtual attendees, most of whom only joined after ticket prices were slashed dramatically. This is the reality facing a man who was once considered one of the most in-demand speakers in the world. What happens when a global figure, a prince who once commanded million-dollar speaking fees, can't even fill a room, even after heavy discounts? This isn't just a rough day. This is the moment the so-called Sussex sparkle runs out, crashing hard with the fallout stretching across continents. And this downfall didn't happen overnight. The warning signs were already there, quietly slipping through in a trail of increasingly urgent marketing emails and steep price reductions. Signals no PR machine could convincingly spin. In Melbourne, Prince Harry was meant to headline the InterEdge Summit, a high-level event centered on workplace mental health. On the surface, it seemed like a strong comeback. A polished venue, a 2-day program, and a room full of ambitious industry professionals. But as April 16, 2026 approached, reality began to set in. Ticket prices didn't just drop, they collapsed. It began with the platinum tier priced at nearly $2,400. When those didn't sell, the gold package was pushed harder. Then came the delegate pass at $997. Eventually, in what felt less like a prestigious event and more like a clearance sale, virtual tickets were offered at just $498. That's 4 rounds of price cuts for a single appearance. A clear indication that the audience isn't merely hesitant, they've stopped buying into what Harry is offering altogether. The so-called $1 million gap is no longer just a catchy phrase. It's a growing financial void, one that's steadily pulling the Sussex brand downward. To really grasp the scale of this fall, you have to go back to the beginning of their post-royal journey. In 2020, when Harry and Meghan stepped out as independent figures on the global stage, the expectations within the speaking industry were bold. Some would even say overconfident. They were reportedly aiming for $1 million per speech. That level of fee is typically reserved for former presidents, groundbreaking tech innovators, or individuals who have genuinely reshaped history. The number was widely discussed and never denied. It became the benchmark for their new direction. They wanted to be positioned alongside names like the Obamas and the Clintons. Now, fast forward to this week in Melbourne, and the conversation sounds very different. Industry insiders suggest Harry's actual speaking fee may have been closer to $50,000. Pause on that for a moment. That's a 95% drop in value in just 6 years. In almost any industry, a loss like that would signal total brand collapse. This isn't just market correction. It's a rejection of the premium image they spent years trying to build. But the empty seats and discounted tickets are only surface-level symptoms. Beneath it all lies a deeper issue, a growing crisis of credibility that has, for many, turned the Sussex brand into something seen as toxic. Harry has tried to position himself as a key voice in mental health, a chief impact officer, an advocate for workplace wellness. But there's an undeniable contradiction at the center of that message. In his memoir, Spare, along with various interviews, he openly discussed his past struggles with heavy drug use. While some applauded his honesty, others, especially in professional circles, have reacted differently. There's an uncomfortable question being asked. Can someone who has publicly described being close to psychological collapse, someone who has battled such intense personal issues, truly be seen as an authority offering guidance to corporate leaders? When people pay thousands of dollars for insight and expertise, they're not expecting a personal narrative that feels more like distress than direction. A recent event in Washington, D.C., highlighted this disconnect perfectly. Attendees arrived expecting a structured discussion on resilience, but left confused. Instead of actionable insights, they felt they were listening to personal complaints delivered under harsh lighting. Some even described it as paying $1,800 to witness a royal unraveling in real time. And while Harry continues presenting himself as a workplace expert, reports suggest his own organization is anything but stable behind the scenes. It's difficult to speak about employee retention and workplace well-being when your own staff turnover tells a different story. Since 2020, reports claim that as many as 25 employees have left the Sussex operation. We're not talking about junior assistants here. These are senior executives and experienced PR professionals walking away. And the exits in 2026 have been especially damaging. James Holt, the couple's longest serving aide, who had been with them since their Kensington Palace days, finally stepped away. Then came Meredith Maines, the PR chief, who barely made it past a year. And then there's Josh Kettler, the chief of staff, who famously lasted just 3 months before leaving. When both your most loyal team members and your newest hires are exiting at the same time, it paints a very clear picture, one that insiders are increasingly describing as an impossible leadership environment. There have been multiple reports suggesting Meghan speaks down to staff, at times in a condescending manner, with some employees allegedly reduced to tears by the pressure. And that raises a serious question. How do you stand in front of CEOs and teach leadership and workplace culture when your own office is constantly losing people? It's a complete mess, and the growing sense of hypocrisy is pushing audiences away in large numbers. While Harry is dealing with the fallout from the Intereg situation, Meghan is reportedly exploring a move that many experts are already calling a disaster waiting to happen. There are rumors she's planning to launch a private members club in Australia, potentially tied to the Soho House network. It feels like a sharp and somewhat desperate pivot from the unmatched exclusivity of royal life to a pay-to-access environment where proximity to fame is the main selling point. Critics see it as a dramatic fall. Going from the balcony of Buckingham Palace, standing beside the Queen, to opening a Soho-style venue in Sydney, it's a shift that's hard for most people to even process. It's like swapping a diamond for glass and insisting it's the better deal. Then there's the selfie controversy. Reports suggest Meghan has been offering selfies at Australian hotels for around $3,000 during her best life retreat appearances. At that point, it stops feeling like a public engagement and starts to look more like a premium cash grab. It all points to a brand scrambling to stay relevant, a rushed attempt to extract value while public interest continues to slip. And when you compare this to how the working royal family operates, the contrast becomes even more stark and increasingly damaging. Take Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and her early years initiative. When she steps forward to speak, it's not just about visibility or personal storytelling. She brings substance. She presents research, releases detailed reports, and introduces frameworks built alongside credible experts in science and education. She doesn't make herself the center of the narrative. The work speaks for itself. There's structure, clarity, and something tangible that audiences can actually take away. Now contrast that with Melbourne. No research unveiled. No data shared. No clear framework introduced before Harry took the stage. On one side, you have a legacy being built on substance. On the other are appearances and personal anecdotes carrying the entire weight. And the market is reacting to that difference in real time with brutal consequences for the Sussex brand. People are beginning to realize that you can't sustain a global platform on personality and grievances alone. As the silence from the Sussex camp grows louder, one question keeps coming up. Why aren't they responding? In the past, they were known for reacting quickly, issuing statements, pushing back legally, and mobilizing online supporters. That a clapback energy, I spore. But now, with headlines filled with reports of empty venues, drastic price cuts, and a 95% drop in speaking fees, there's nothing, just silence. And that silence is starting to speak volumes. It suggests there may not be a solid defense for what's being called the $1 million gap. Because you can't argue with ticket sales, you can't spin half-empty rooms into success when images are already circulating online. In the professional speaking world, reputation travels fast, faster than any marketing effort. And right now, the perception is clear. The Sussex brand is underperforming. Event organizers are taking notice. The excitement that once justified those premium fees is fading piece by piece. Everything is building toward a critical moment, and the outcome could surprise even those who still believe in the Sussex narrative. This is a turning point. Potential is no longer enough. People want proof. Audiences aren't showing up out of curiosity anymore. They're arriving with skepticism and high expectations. And if that reaction doesn't change soon, this won't just be about one disappointing tour or a few empty seats in Melbourne. Right now, it feels like they're trying to steer a ship that's taking on water from every direction, and the old strategies, revealing personal details, sharing shocking moments, aren't landing the way they used to. The audience has heard it all before, and they're no longer willing to pay premium prices to hear the same story again. What's unfolding is starting to look like a cautionary tale for the era of digital branding and automated fame. A title alone won't carry you forever. And you can't keep selling the same narrative at a high price once it's been repeated over and over. Every time Harry steps onto a stage and revisits the same grievances about his past, another potential audience member decides it's simply not worth showing up. Every time Meghan rolls out a new venture like American Riviera Orchard, with no CEO in place, no actual products, and no clearly defined direction, the so-called Sussex sparkle fades a little further. The public is starting to recognize a pattern. They're beginning to see them as quasi-royal figures playing the part, but without the institutional backing that once gave them real authority. And in today's fast-moving media environment, once that perception sets in, it's incredibly difficult to undo. Looking at the fallout from the Melbourne summit, there's an undeniable layer of irony. They stepped away from royal life in pursuit of privacy and financial independence. Instead, they've landed in a cycle of constant exposure, earning less with each passing year. They're now operating inside a different kind of system, one where their value is judged in real time by ticket sales, engagement metrics, and the unforgiving reality of the open market. The $1 million gap isn't just about money anymore. It represents the growing distance between how they see themselves and how the public actually views them. They're trying to package a luxury experience, but what's being delivered feels closer to bargain bin content, and the audience is starting to walk away. So, what do you think about this dramatic drop in value? Is it genuinely unfortunate to see a print struggle like this? Or is this simply the market reflecting what many now believe about the Sussex brand? If this breakdown gave you a clearer picture of what's happening behind the inner edge collapse, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to see the numbers behind the headlines, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Is the Sussex brand finished, or is there still a chance for a comeback before the spotlight fades completely? The world is watching, and we'll be here covering every moment of the fallout. But let's dig deeper into the Soho House angle, because this is where things start to get even more intriguing. Why would a duchess lean so heavily on a private members club network instead of building something entirely her own? There are whispers that her longtime associate, Marcus Anderson, often described as a key figure within Soho House, is playing a central role behind the scenes of this Australian push. It creates the impression that this tour is being propped up by a membership-based network, possibly because major corporate backers have stepped away. And that shift matters. When you're no longer the main attraction, you become part of someone else's lineup. It's a subtle but significant change in power. Harry and Meghan are no longer the ones setting the agenda. They're being brought in to help fill seats. Now think back to the precedent set in DC at that New York event where Harry appeared on a panel discussing mental health. Ticket prices were steep, but the substance didn't match. Attendees described the session as underwhelming, even uncomfortable to sit through. It became another example of personal storytelling outweighing professional insight. In a city like Washington, where audiences are used to hearing from top-tier experts, scientists, policymakers, specialists, the bar is high. So when Harry focused heavily on personal frustrations about his upbringing and privacy, it didn't just miss the mark, it frustrated the audience. And that reaction spread quickly. It's part of the reason why the Melbourne event had to reduce prices so drastically. This isn't just about perception. It's about measurable decline in demand. Look again at the staffing situation. James Holt's departure in 2026 was, for many observers, the final signal. He wasn't just another employee. He was a link to Harry's past, someone who understood both the royal system and their new life in California. If someone like that walks away, it raises serious questions. When 25 people leave an organization, it's not a hiring issue. It's a leadership problem. And that kind of internal instability eventually becomes visible externally through empty venues, lukewarm receptions, and performances that fail to connect. While Harry has been out trying to stabilize his speaking career, Meghan has reportedly been focused on building her business ventures, at least according to official narratives. You might remember the buzz around American Riviera Orchard. It was pitched as a lifestyle empire, something akin to a Montecito version of Martha Stewart, built around curated products like jams, home goods, and luxury branding. But reality hit quickly. Trademark complications, legal challenges, and inconsistencies in filings derailed the project before it even had a chance to properly launch. Then came the pivot. In early 2025, Meghan announced that the original concept was being scrapped and replaced with a new venture called as Ever. This time, instead of going solo, she aligned more closely with Netflix, not just as a content distributor, but as a business partner. Critics see this as a make-or-break move. By tying the brand to a major corporation, she's effectively traded independence for stability. It's a decision that signals a shift from building something alone to relying on an established system for support. The name as Ever is meant to suggest timeless appeal. But to many, it comes across as something else, a brand searching for direction after running out of options. When a lifestyle empire has to be rebranded before selling even a single product, it stops looking like a power move and starts to look like crisis management. To really understand why the As Ever rebrand and the Melbourne Summit are both struggling, you have to look behind the scenes, or more specifically, at the people who are no longer there. In December 2025, a major shift took place when the Archewell Foundation was reintroduced as Archewell Philanthropies. This wasn't just a cosmetic change. It signaled a structural downsizing that triggered a wave of layoffs. But the real turning point came just months later. In January 2026, James Holt, the Sussex's most loyal and long-standing aide, stepped down from his role as executive director. Holt wasn't just another staff member. He was the link to their royal past, someone deeply embedded in their journey from palace life to independence. Losing him is like a ship losing its steering in the middle of a storm, and he wasn't the only one. Meredith Maines, a high-level communications executive, exited after less than a year in the role. When both your most experienced insider and your newest leadership hire leave at the same time, it stops looking like restructuring and starts looking like collapse. At this point, more than 25 senior staff members have reportedly departed since 2020. That averages out to one major exit roughly every 2 months. In elite circles, that's not normal turnover. It's closer to a full-scale evacuation. While Harry is dealing with the optics of empty seats in Melbourne, Meghan is preparing for her own moment in the spotlight in Sydney with the Her Best Life retreat. And if Harry's pricing raised eyebrows, this retreat is taking things even further. VIP weekend packages are reportedly priced above $2,200, with some estimates suggesting that an overnight experience paired with limited access to the Duchess can reach $3,000. So, what exactly are attendees paying for? Is it a professional workshop, a wellness experience, or simply proximity to someone who was once part of the royal institution? There's also growing speculation that the retreat may double as a soft launch or recruitment funnel for a future Soho House location in Sydney. Meghan's long-standing connection with Soho House executive Marcus Anderson has fueled theories that this tour is less about philanthropy and more about positioning within a private club ecosystem. It's a striking shift. From attending formal state events at Buckingham Palace to promoting a high-priced members-style retreat built around exclusivity and access, it's a trajectory that has left many observers in Australia surprised. Some have even mocked the tone, describing it as a classy with a K. And the irony hasn't gone unnoticed. Our best life retreat, led by someone whose own ventures have been marked by constant pivots and uncertainty. And then there's what the Australian media has dubbed the Walmart Wallace rollback. It's a harsh nickname, but one that captures the perception of a brand losing its premium edge. When Harry was first announced as the keynote speaker at the InterEdge Summit, gold tier tickets were priced close to $2,000. But as the event approached and seats remained unsold, organizers introduced a $997 delegate pass. This lower tier option stripped away the extras. Attendees still got access to the talk, but without the added networking perks, wellness sessions, or exclusive lounge experiences. In simple terms, it signaled that the value of the experience had been cut in half within weeks. And in the world of high-end branding, a 50% price drop sends a clear message. It suggests the product is either overpriced or no longer in demand. Organizers may frame it as an effort to improve accessibility, but to the public, it looks more like a last-minute attempt to avoid the optics of a half-empty venue.